Hey everyone, welcome back to another edition of BitFinity, starring me, Matthew Taranto, and my co-host, Chris Seward.
Hey guys and girls.
Yeah, it's a very special edition today because we got a surprise announcement from the big N themselves. The brand new Nintendo console that everyone's talking about now, Nintendo Switch.
Yeah, what the heck?
What the heck? Surprise, everybody! So, of course, we're going to go ahead and take this opportunity to bring you a new edition of BitFinity to talk about our latest, talk about our impressions of the system, things we like, things we, are a little concerned about, and just some final thoughts, just to get you guys up to speed on our own, our own thoughts and such. So, I guess I'll start off, because I want to first and foremost say, I totally called it! I called it in 2013. You could check the record. I said that Nintendo's next system would be a hybrid. And then everybody jumped on the hybrid train and was like, oh yeah, of course, it's going to be a hybrid. I was the first one, baby. And I was right. I was totally right about it. Because look at it. It's a handheld and it's a console. Now, one thing I will admit to being wrong about is the release date. That's surprising.
Yeah. Oh, I'm very surprised by that.
I absolutely did not expect it to be March 2017. I was almost certain that was a placeholder date.
Well, they told you. They're like, hey, Matthew, it's coming out March 2017. And you're like, yeah, right.
Yeah, you know me. I'm the cynic. So
I think I was more cynical, actually.
That surprised me. But overall, my initial impressions are largely positive. I'm pretty excited about this. I think the portable element looks pretty creative and elegant. I like the aspect of being able to use the controllers in different ways. It's sort of like how the Wiimote sideways is one thing,
yeah,
and then vertical and horizontal they're two different things.
Yeah.
And this is kind of similar to that. Like it hooks up to the regular controller, then it hooks up to the other controller, and they're like symmetrical in opposite ways, and I think that's pretty cool. There's a couple things I'm a little bit, there's a couple other things that were slightly disappointing to me, but I'll get to them in time. But that's kind of my initial impressions. Are kind of 80% good right now. So actually, like with a lot of Nintendo console reveals, I am cautiously optimistic. I think that's kind of always my initial impression when I see new Nintendo consoles. So, Chris, what were your initial thoughts when you saw this crazy 3-minute video that Nintendo revealed today?
Well, I actually am more than cautiously optimistic. I would say I'm flat out optimistic at this point.
Nice. All right.
For years, I think we'd both been discussing what they should do for the next console, and I was also on the same page with you, where it just makes a lot of sense for them to combine their two different lines of console. They're spending all this resources developing the 3DS and the Wii U separately.
And their libraries.
Yeah,
so you have
these
two
totally
Mario
libraries.
Karts,
Yeah,
two Smash Brothers. Yeah,
it makes a
starts
lot
to feel
more
a little
sense
redundant.
makes a lot more sense to consolidate it. And I think they're really hitting the right stride here. I love to see the cartridges are back. I've always been a cartridge fan. I always thought, ever since the PlayStation, I'm like, discs are slow and they get scratched, and you get broken or something.
They are very vulnerable.
And all the load times, load times were not a thing back in the old days of Nintendo. But
you're right.
They even tried to avoid load times with the GameCube with the tiny little discs that had slightly less loading time than the other discs that other consoles had. But then they went to the Wii and the load times started to be more of a thing.
Yeah. There is something charmingly elegant about the cartridge aspect, and cartridges they've come a long way too. So they can do FMV videos now, unlike in the 64 days. So you can get your sweet FMVs
yeah, that's true.
from Square Enix.
Yeah, so my basic impression was that I'm really glad they did this. I think this is the right direction. I encouraged to see that this could be a new era of Nintendo that is filled with good games that are not dumbed down mobile games that are depressing.
Okay, yeah. Well, that's cool. This is kind of related, but let's kind of talk about the most impressive things, or the things we're most looking forward to. I'll go ahead and go first. Like I said, I really like the portable aspect. I think that's a good way to go with it. Largely because, not just because it will consolidate their libraries into one, but also because it just feels like that's the way things were going. The handhelds were getting stronger and stronger. Consoles had kind of plateaued.
Yep.
It makes a lot of sense to put them together like this. And I also noticed, they don't call it the Wii DS or anything like that.
Yeah.
So it feels like a third pillar kind of thing, like they did with the DS. If those of you who might remember them describing the DS as a third pillar.
Yeah.
I think that was really a safeguard in case the DS failed. They could go back to the Game Boy line,
right.
Go back to the Super Nintendo or Ultra Nintendo or whatever. I think in this case, if this doesn't work, they could go back to the DS line.
Yep.
Have another clamshell thing that fits in your pocket, whatever. So I think they're kind of banking on this to be similar to the DS and kind of take off on its own and become the next big thing. Another element I really like is the focus on. Well, there was a new Mario revealed.
Yeah.
So that's pretty major.
Yeah.
And it looks. I mean, we saw a very tiny amount of it. My initial impressions were that it looks kind of like Sunshine.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of has, and it might just because of the setting that they showed. Mario's in kind of this mariachi like Shy Guy city or something.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a quirky environment. But the camera is behind his shoulder, so it's got more of that immersive Galaxy Mario 64 Sunshine feel that we were really a big fan of when we were talking about the Mario 64, in the podcast for Mario 64.
Right.
So I think that's really cool. I think it's good that they got third parties on board. They have that pretty impressive list. So hopefully that all means we're gonna get some decent support. And I like the creativity with the controllers, folding and stuff. I like that I can play it in bed. My Wii U can't reach my bed, so when it's time for bed, I gotta bust out the 3DS and play a worse version of Smash Brothers. Let's be honest. So yeah, I think all those are cool things. I think the name's pretty good. It's not quite as quirky as some names in the past, but I think it describes the central hook of the system very elegantly. Nintendo Switch. You can switch it from handheld to console. I mean, console to handheld. So yeah. I think those are all the things that stood out to me. What about you, Chris?
I totally agree with most of that. I think the name Switch is really good. In the big list of Nintendo console names, like I would say that the Wii U is near the bottom, and I'd say the Switch is the upper half, near the top. I'd say it's catchy. People can get what it is very quickly, and I think that's really important because the Wii U suffered from people not really knowing what it was. Like I know you were a little. I don't know how many people you met like this, but I met multiple people who thought that the Wii U was just an add-on to the Wii. It was like this weird gamepad thing that.
I personally kind of like the Wii U name, but I can understand that a fair amount of people. I don't know if it was related to the name or just the initial reveal where they didn't show the system itself really, or both or what. But yeah, there were still people at Target that think it's it's an accessory for the Wii.
Right.
So you're right about that. It is a confusing name in retrospect.
Yeah. So the new name's great. I'm totally on board with consolidating the two lines of the hardware because that means like almost automatically, as long as most of the 3D development teams kind of transition to the Switch, this is going to have a great lineup of games.
Yeah.
One of the main complaints with Nintendo, really since the N64, has been, the third-party support isn't that great. Mm-hmm. But the handheld support has always had great support.
Yeah.
So if they can actually hang on to those relationships and keep those developers on board for the Switch, this is going to be a big deal. And I think that not only do they have that investment in those third parties for the handhelds, for many years, but by designing the system to fill this gap in the market, I think they're really on the right track because the Switch is actually the first console that utilizes smartphone technology. So this whole new wave of smartphones and tablets that have come out in the last 5 years or whatever have really operated on different technological principles than traditional PCs. And consoles in the past and handhelds have all kind of used the old PC architecture, like it's the x86 chip architecture.
I see.
Specifically, which works great and all, but with this new smartphone technology, you can essentially get things much smaller and more efficient. You can't reach the same heights of performance as like a top of the line gaming PC or something, but there's a lot of other benefits. So I think it's really good that they're doing this because they're kind of going for like a top end tablet basically. So,
but with buttons,
and
Nintendo games.
Yeah. And I think that's great because I think they'll be able to, from what I've read, it looks like they'll be able to reach performance standards of like at least the Wii U, like obviously. So they'll probably be somewhere like a Wii U, in between the Wii U and a Xbox One. So it looks like they won't really, it's not going to be as powerful as a PS4 or whatever the next generation will be, but I think that's fine. I think it's gonna as long as it can do like 1080p and 60 frames per second, I think it's a really good sweet spot for technology because it's not gonna have a lot of competitors in that range, because all the other people who are developing like smartphones and stuff, they they want to make them powerful, but they're not going for gaming the same way that Nintendo is.
Right.
And the other consoles are just battling each other out to try to be more powerful and more like, and they're always going to lose against the gaming PC in terms of power, but they're kind of trying to take a gaming PC and bring it into the home. And I think Nintendo's being really smart by making this unique space for their new console. And I really think they have a good shot at seeing it succeed. Other good things, the cartridges are great. As long as they're using a chipset that can quickly read and load stuff from the cartridges, so you have quick load times, then I think that's great, because it's pretty inexpensive to have SD cards that have a lot of space on them, so they shouldn't run into problems where like, oh, this game can't fit on the Switch. I think it's really cool the way that they're integrating the controllers into the tablet. It looks like a Wii U gamepad, except the little sides come off.
Yeah.
And I'm really interested to see how that really works and how it feels in your hand. Because I like the feel of the gamepad in my hand. The two little things do look a little small, so I'm not sure how they'll feel. But will one tablet support 4 controllers? So if someone else has the Joy-Con, will they be able to play for like 4 controllers onto one Switch?
It's a few mysteries.
To learn some of these things.
Still kind of up in the air.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are some good points there. One thing I forgot to mention was, it seems like this has kind of got an equal focus on East and West. I think in the West, there's console games are kind of the big thing. In the East, of course, it's handheld. So it's kind of a little blend of both. So I mean, it's a gambit that might work out. But let's move on to stuff we're concerned about. Because you were talking about developers, hopefully the 3DS developers will stay on board. One thing I'm a little bit worried about regarding that is, with the 3DS, it was kind of a little bit of a different architecture. You could make a game that was smaller or 2D or didn't really look amazing, and it would still be totally acceptable, because it's a handheld game. They're expected to be kind of lower end on the power scale and everything. So are we going to get developers that see this as kind of like that sort of friendly kind of architecture, or is it going to feel like more along the lines of like a Wii or a Wii U, where they are still making console games, but they can't make the big console games they want? Are we not going to get ports again of PlayStation 4 and Xbox One games because the Switch wouldn't be able to handle them? That's another kind of little concern. At the same time, if this is a consolidated library, I mean, maybe Nintendo's own development teams and a few second parties and a little bit of third party support will still be enough to prevent droughts, because it's one consolidated library. Sorry, go ahead.
I think those are two very good points. I think that, to the first point as to how the handheld developers will adapt, that depends a lot on how Nintendo handles digital distribution, I think. Because looking at Steam, for example, Steam has a wide variety of games. There's games that look like they're from the NES era. Pretty much every era of gaming. Yeah. You can make a new game that fits that era if you want.
That's true.
And put it on Steam. So if Nintendo continues to expand their digital offerings and help support developers making games that way, then and kind of improves their system, as they have been, then I could still see that studios that can't really swing the big budget graphics and the big budget production values, they could still make a game that is a great game, and they could sell it for $10 or $20 and do it digitally. And as long as Nintendo is able to have a system that really promotes that kind of distribution and promotes those developers, then I think they could still thrive very well. But also, I don't know, maybe they'll still do it on cartridges and they'll just have lower prices. There's different ways they could do it. I think it's definitely a concern, but I have to think that Nintendo realizes the incredible risk they'd be running if they're going to alienate any of those long-term developers that have been with them on the handheld consoles.
Yeah. Another thing I'm a little worried about is the actual portability of it. Yeah. It won't fit in your pocket.
No.
It's the kind of thing like with a tablet, you would need some sort of carrier or bag to take it with you. I'm not really used to carrying a bag myself. I kind of my 3DS XL can fit in my pocket still pretty easily. I guess I'll get a bag for this. I think it's cool. I'd love to carry it around. It's just not super convenient. Whenever I'm going to, I don't know. I usually take my 3DS with me to a lot of places, even if I'm just going to get I don't know, picking up groceries or something, because sometimes I'll do an errand and I'll end up waiting, and it's like, oh, okay, time to play it. I don't know if this is going to be exactly as user-friendly to take around. So for a portable system, I would say it's less portable than something like the past 3DSs.
I think that's a good point. I think to the other point you raised, though, it actually will be more difficult for games to be ported to the Switch from other consoles because the chipset is so different. That actually raises technological difficulties in porting a game.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of a double-edged sword because as long as they can, like I'm saying, as long as they can transition their developers from the 3DS onto the Switch, they're in good shape. But if they don't do that well, and then they will probably struggle with games that are made for the Xbox or the PS4 not being able to come to the Switch, or at least it'll be a bit more difficult to do that, which
sure.
Won't be too great for the developers.
Mm-hmm. How about one for you? Any specific things you're wary on right now?
I'm not terribly wary on those regards because I'm going to trust that Nintendo sees the value in the developers that they have, and they've been maintaining those relationships, and they're really going to try to keep them on board for the Switch. I do think they'll be able to do that pretty well. As long as the Switch has a pretty good launch, I think they're in good shape. Really, the main bad things I'm worried about are those controllers do look really small. I have kind of big hands, and when those controllers are like switched off, they're like split off of the Joy-Con,
like sideways and
sideways. Yeah, there's like a picture of like two guys, I guess, holding them, and their hands are like kind of crunched around them. I'm like, it's a little small.
Yeah. I'm curious how they're gonna work the controllers ergonomically, because the one on the they're shaped pretty much identically, like mirrored, but one of them you're holding one way and the other you're holding the other way. You know what I mean? Like the curve is facing one way for the left the left Joy-Con, and the curve is facing the other way for the right Joy-Con. So I'm really curious if they can make that work from a design standpoint to where it's ergonomic from 3 different directions.
That if they do that successfully, I will be impressed.
That'd be pretty impressive.
I kind of expect that to be it'll feel fine when you're holding it all together, and when you split it apart, it's like it's a little weird, but it's all right. And I think I'm also a little concerned that if Nintendo's listening to this, Nintendo, put a decent amount of storage space on this Switch, please. Like at least like I don't know, 128 gigs sounds ridiculously small these days. But at least 128 gigs, preferably 256 or more. Because if you actually want people to download your games from your store, and you actually want digital sales to be a thing, you need more space than the 32 on the Wii U Deluxe,
or 16 on the non-deluxe. 16.
Was it? No, it was 8, wasn't it? We went over this last time. It was 8.
Was it 8? Maybe it was 8. Yeah, I think you're right. I don't think you can download there's some games you can't download on the old Wii U at all because they're too big. Like
that's just ridiculous. Like it needs at least 128. Like that needs to be the bare minimum that they would even consider. And that's like totally affordable. That's really, really cheap. Like in terms of paying for that sort of storage space. So come on, Nintendo, just step up for that, please. Beyond that, since it's based on being a tablet and it's completely portable, what is the little the dock for it? What does it do? Does it do anything?
Well, the dock charges it and provides power to it when it's loaded in there. So it's like a charger, but it also displays it on the TV is what it does.
Does it enable the Switch to get to like 4K on the TV or something?
That's a good question, actually. There are a couple little mysteries we still don't know, but some people have pointed out that they think in the trailer that Zelda looks a little bit stuttery when it's in portable mode.
Okay.
Now we're not sure. It could be just the video not, rendering super great or whatever. Yeah. But there's that, and there's also 2 HDMI ports or something you can see on the dock itself.
Oh.
So we're not quite sure what that is either. So it's a little bit up in the air. I think it's possible that games may look better when they're on the TV, and you just don't quite notice the flaws as much when they're smaller. But I guess we'll kind of have to wait and see. Yeah. I don't think it's going to be as big a jump as the Wii U's TV to gamepad comparison, because I'm pretty sure they confirmed this was high definition on the screen and everything.
Yeah.
Unless I missed something. One last thing I'm a little bit concerned about is, and I know this is probably a positive for some people who feel like Nintendo's gotten too radical, but I don't think games themselves will really change too much. Like the way you play the game, you know, you can play it here, you can play it outside, you know, that's cool. But there's not really like a new gameplay idea, at least from this video, that will affect the games themselves.
Right.
Which I kind of miss a little bit. I feel like we've kind of always gotten some sort of quirky game idea. Even with the GameCube, which was fairly conservative by all means, it still had like the Game Boy Advance hookups. It had the shoulder buttons that squeezed down, which is a little crazy. And you know, it's like I said, it's very possible one of those mysterious buttons we've seen on the controller, you know, does something a little unusual that we haven't, you know, they haven't revealed yet. But so far, I'm sort of missing that one extra little element of gameplay innovation that Nintendo usually brings forth with their systems.
Yeah, I hear you.
But I understand that's risky too, you know.
Yeah, they've kind of pushed the boundaries with most of their hardware, which I always like about Nintendo. So the fact that they're really not this time is a little disappointing, but I think it's also a little safe because with the Wii U, I think it was an innovative choice with the gamepad, but not a lot of developers really used it.
Yeah, that's true.
And I was disappointed by that. So I'm hopeful that by going back to it with the Switch, then maybe they will kind of hammer home on that a little bit, and maybe some more developers will, you know, really make use of the asynchronous gameplay sort of ideas. Mm-hmm. So I'm hopeful for that.
Yeah.
And one more good news on the hardware front. From what I read here, it looks like it'll probably use Wi-Fi Direct instead of Bluetooth for the wireless controllers, which will have less delay.
Oh, okay. That is cool.
So that's, yeah. The delay on the Bluetooth always kind of bothered me, so I'm glad that that's probably what they'll do.
I'm hoping I don't know how likely this is at this point because they haven't confirmed it, but I'm hoping there is an element of motion control in the controllers because I really like, you know, I know sometimes it's too much and some people didn't like how, you know, they had the waggle for some games, or you know, whatever. But a few games, like, I liked it in Aiming in Zelda. I really liked it in Splatoon. Just having that little extra bit of finesse from the motion controls, I think adds a lot. And I would really miss it in this Splatoon possible sequel or enhanced port that they're bringing over. I would really miss that extra element of aiming if they don't have some level of motion controls in there.
Yeah, I was actually surprised to see that. It looked like Splatoon 1, doesn't it?
Yeah, but they're being pretty secretive about that and the Mario Kart game, which both had new elements. Like Mario Kart had King Boo, which was not in Mario Kart 8, and it had the two items, like in Double Dash. Mm-hmm. And Splatoon had different pants and hairstyles, which were not in the original. So it either means a sequel, in which case maybe it's early along, maybe they're just reusing models, which would be, in my opinion, slightly disappointing just because it looks a little too similar, or it's some sort of enhanced port, a quick way to get some strong software kind of out around the launch window to kind of fill in some gaps, and then bring the more original, fully developed stuff a little later, along with Mario, of course, which is also an original game. So
I think that's a cool idea because, like with Splatoon, they were releasing content updates for almost a year on that. That was great.
Yeah,
and really... maybe the team just rolled into doing it, like they prepared the Switch version, and then they're just going to keep doing that. That would be cool, right?
Yeah, and in fact, I mean, I think even Smash could benefit from like a beefy like Smash for Switch or whatever, and it's like, you know, all the DLC characters, maybe the Ice Climbers are back, you know, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, Smash is at the point where it's really fine-tuned and really balanced. I don't know if they need to redo the engine from scratch again. Yeah. They might be better off just taking the characters that exist, maybe tweaking a few things, maybe polishing a few visual elements here and there, and then adding just a buttload of stuff and making a new Smash, you know? I don't know. You could go either way with it. You could do an enhanced port, you can make a sequel. They got a lot of options on the table. So, but yeah, March is not far away. I mean, 5 months from reveal to release for a new system. That's that's pretty surprising. So
I'm impressed. I'm impressed.
Yeah, I'm hoping they have a strong launch because I'd rather them have like hit the ground running than, you know, release it in March. Like if they have to delay it a few months to make it like a super awesome launch, I'd be totally fine with that.
Right.
I theorize that. I guess we're in the final thoughts now. You know, we're kind of chewing the fat, shooting the breeze, chewing the fat.
Chewing the breeze.
We're kind of chewing the breeze here. I theorize that they didn't show it at E3 because the core feature of the system is not really something that really benefits from a demo at E3. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
the E3 demos are always kind of chained up together. You know, you're probably not going to be able to disassemble the thing. You know, to make it all like a transformer. You know, when it's always tethered to the whatever. I mean, that's my guess, but I don't really understand otherwise why they wouldn't show this at last E3. It'd be a great thing to showcase Zelda on. I mean, just
well, if they don't have a specific game for it, that's really going to change. Like, if most of the games they have to show for it are Wii U games, you know, like maybe Mario wasn't ready. Like all we saw of Mario was like, you know, what,
it was like
10
5
seconds or something.
Yeah,
5 seconds, yeah,
very short.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure that if that's a launch title, I'd be pretty surprised. It's probably, you know, they'll show more about it before the Switch is released, but you know, might not be a launch title.
It'd be nice to have a launch Mario game though.
Yeah, but they're gonna have Zelda already, so I don't think they'll do both.
You might be right about that. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
But from what we've seen, I'm actually so in the past, you know, I was commenting that if the NX comes out and it's not as powerful as the Wii U, then we're gonna feel kind of shortchanged. Like, Zelda could have been prettier with the, you know, if it was made for the NX. But now it's not really a concern because it's pretty much gonna be as powerful as the Wii U.
Yeah,
maybe a little more powerful, but
I mean, maybe not right at launch. You know, not right away or whatever.
Yeah.
So here's the question: would you get Zelda on the Wii U with the touchscreen and the map and such, or Zelda on the NX with the brand new system smell and the cartridge, tiny cartridge, and the portability? It is a question.
What is your answer?
I would have to wait and see if there's gyro controls. That's kind of I like the gyro aiming with stuff, and I kind of want to know how vital the map is and if there are any actual additional features in the next version. There's still a few things up in the air. I'm definitely gonna get Zelda, but yeah, I mean, if there's something else for the for the Nintendo Switch that comes out at launch that I really want, I could see myself going with the Wii U. I could go either way.
Does this not have a touchscreen?
We don't know yet, which is weird. I feel like it should, because I think people expect screens to be like, especially a screen that looks like a tablet.
Oh yeah.
I think they expect screens to have touch features.
I'd be extremely surprised if it's not a touchscreen.
Well, consider this. It's going to cost more if it's a touchscreen, and they'd have to develop every game to have both selectable menus via, you know, analog stick and touch-sensitive menus for only when it's off TV play.
That's true.
But I agree. I think it should be a touchscreen. I think it's a lot more intuitive. I think touchscreens are ubiquitous. I think they're, you know, people just expect to see things and be able to interact with it via touch, even with buttons and stuff. So I would definitely recommend there being a touch. Plus, I mean, how are you going to do Miiverse? How are you going to do all these little, you know, smaller benefits, like being able to have these drawing mini games and, you know, whatever.
I think I would be extremely surprised if it's not a touchscreen. I think that that would make it feel like a step back from the Wii U, which I don't think they're gonna do. This is basically the Wii U except fully realized. That's how I'm seeing this.
Yeah, I think I'd agree there. All right, I guess for our last question, what do you think would be a good price point, and what do you think it's going to cost?
I'll take that first. I'm gonna say I think $299 would be. You know what? Considering the mobile function of this, it shouldn't be more than $299. I think $249 would be. It would sell like gangbusters, but.
You know, I was gonna say that same range. I was gonna say $249, $299. I think $299 is kind of on the higher end. I think that'd be a little bit of a cocky price.
Yeah,
I think $249. I feel like Nintendo priced the Wii U slightly out of its range. You know, they had it was $349 for the full version, or $300 for the 8 gigabyte version. So
the fake version.
I mean, if you consider the 3DS came out at $250, and then they had an $80 price drop, and this is kind of a follow up to that, and also follow. I mean, let's be honest, follow up to the Wii U as well. It's a combination. I just think 250 is kind of like when the Wii came out. It was cheaper than everyone expected, and it was like super popular. What was it? I can't remember if it was 200 or 250. I think it was 250. But I think that 250 price tag is a really tantalizing one. And I think 300 would be fine. I think 250 would be better.
Yeah, it was 250. Looks like, and it came with
Wii Sports.
Wii Sports, yeah.
Yeah, and I heard Nintendo is not yet. They're not yet sure if they want to package the controller shell that you attach the things to, with the system. I think they really should. I think that would be a big mistake. First of all, it's a little piece of plastic. It can't cost that much. Secondly, it's a huge part of the system's appeal to be able to take it from one thing and put it on the other. You know, that's an immediate, like, this is what the system does. Otherwise, you're just, whenever you're playing the game off TV, you're holding the two things separate. And I mean, that's, you can do that, but it's a little janky Kong.
Yep, I agree. They should definitely include that.
Nintendo.
But then again, they did show the whatchamacallit. It looked like a
like a controller pro.
Yeah.
That looked like a kind of a separate thing, like a sold separately thing.
Yeah, probably. Yep.
I don't think that's gonna be like the main controller that they package in. It kind of reminded me of like the Wii U controller pro, where you buy it separately.
Right.
But I really think they should package that controller shell in there. I think it'd be a big mistake not to.
Yep, I agree with that.
Okay, I guess that'll wrap up this edition of BitFbits, this very special Nintendo Switch discussion.
Yeah, I'm not sure how bit it is though. It's it's like 30 minutes or something. Jeez.
Yeah, got a little beefier than we expected. But hey, it's new Nintendo hardware.
It's a beefy bit.
So it's a beefy bit. So if you have some beefy bits of your own, be sure to show them to. Let me go back. If you have some comments about the Nintendo Switch, go ahead and leave us a comment for us. I talk real good. And don't forget to like us on Facebook and subscribe.
Well, we don't actually do a Facebook really, but you can like us here, like our video here. That'd be cool. Or subscribe to us. That's cool too.
Subscribe.
Yep, subscribe. Yep, that's good.
Like we said, we'll be churning out new footage. New content every Tuesday for the next several Tuesdays. And so stay tuned. We got some big plans. Big plans for me especially because tomorrow I'm having a new baby. Well, my wife is having a baby.
Oh, that's not as impressive.
Yeah, not as impressive. Tomorrow morning, my wife will be having our daughter Mia. So hopefully everything goes well. And next time we will be, you'll hear my voice. I will be the father of two. Guess I am the father of two now, but one will be out and about. Not only out, but also about. So let's wrap this up. I'm stretching this thing out. Sorry. All right, guys, let us know what you think. Thanks for listening, and I think we agree the future looks bright. We're excited.
Absolutely. This could be the best Nintendo era since the Super Nintendo. That's what I'm hoping on that.
Oh, okay, high expectations. Let's see it happen. Let's see it happen, Nintendo.
Yeah, prove me wrong, Nintendo. Wait, no,
right.
don't.
No. So, till next time, I'm Matthew.
And I'm Chris.
And we will see you later.
Smell your flip side.